What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Michael here. And before we get started on today's topic, I just want to say we got a couple videos coming on in the pipeline, and one really big one that I've been researching a lot about, but I'm not quite ready to release it yet. So to the person who actually suggested it to me, my brother Nick, and by brother, I mean brother from another mother, Nick, my bad, give me some time. I'm still working on that video. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this interesting concept, and it has to do with Ciryl Gane versus Rozenstruik a little bit, but it's a much deeper conversation than that. So I was blown away by Ciryl Gane's performance in the sense that for a guy with only 8 fights in MMA and has all the physical tools and attributes to basically be Francis Ngannou 2.0, maybe a little less power, but still a prototypical power puncher in the heavyweight division, which, by the way, he can be that if he wants to be. He has shown that he's got the power to do that, but I digress. Anyway, for a guy who does have all the athletic tools to be a prototypical brawler and be good at it, Ciryl Gane decided to show that he's more than that. And what we saw is something that we will probably not see from another heavyweight for a very long time. Ciryl Gane displayed footwork, speed, precision, and a presence of mind, as well as commitment to the game plan that you don't see from a heavyweight, much less a heavyweight with only 8 fights under his belt. And all people can talk about was how boring the fight was, which is fair. It was not an eventful fight. It was dull. But it's even worse when Michael Bisping, who's one of the most respected minds in MMA and a former middleweight champion in the UFC, and then Dana White right after, are trashing his performance. And it's sad because you have a guy who, again, in only 8 fights, displayed something that I don't think heavyweights get in 20 fights. But here we are. And that led me to ask myself a question. What makes a fight good? And what I mean by good is, what do the masses want? You know, because the simple answer for a lot of people is, have them stand and bang. But honestly, if a fight is sloppy and guys are just swinging, I don't find that enjoyable. Conversely, I can find a grappling heavy fight enjoyable if guys are actually transitioning and there is movement going on in those grappling exchanges. But if guys are just laying and praying and throwing pitter-patter shots, then I tend to get bored as well. So I don't think it's as simple as a science of, well, get them to stand up and start swinging equals good fight. I think it goes something deeper. And I'm going to share this kind of little theory I have. So I think when asking what makes an MMA fight good, you have to ask, what does a good MMA fight feel like? Well, it feels like you're watching entertainment. I know that sounds weird, but yeah, we're watching entertainment. MMA is a form of entertainment. The UFC is a form of entertainment, and MMA is the medium by which they entertain us, right? So what makes a good MMA fight different than a good choreographed martial arts fight in a movie or a TV show? And after searching for the answer, besides the fact that one's real and one isn't, and maybe the moves applied are different, there isn't really much difference. What makes a good MMA fight also makes a good choreographed martial arts fight in film. And that is emotional tension and a display of heart being played out through martial arts being used as the medium. Now, I understand that needs more in-depth explanation. Like, what is emotional tension? And what display of heart do you need? So let me explain. When I talk about emotional tension, what I mean is, what are the stakes? What does this mean? Why does this matter? And I think this part really makes a fight go from good to great. And then the other is display of heart. And for me, a display of heart is this. When a fight is happening and people persevere through damage and deal out damage, and there's that back and forth chess match that happens, guys have to display incredible heart to push through and persevere for a victory. So those two things you get to see not just in MMA, you see in kickboxing fights, you see in Muay Thai fights, jiu-jitsu matches, wrestling matches, etc., etc. No matter what, a good contest in any of those mediums are enjoyed when there is emotional weight or emotional tension and a display of heart being shown. Let me give you an example. Let's look to the world of anime and one of the most famous fights in anime history, Rock Lee versus Gaara. Now, what's the story? Well, the story is that Rock Lee is an underdog facing off against the biggest Goliath in the show so far in Gaara, and nearly comes away with a victory. And as a result, in anime circles, this is considered one of the greatest anime fights of all time, right? Well, the story and the display of heart was shown exactly like how, let's say, a Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner would go, where Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin weren't exactly the most technical of fighters, especially for today's standards. But the story is, the winner gets a six-figure contract in the UFC, and the loser goes home with nothing. And then these two proceed to wail on each other and fight through all kinds of fatigue, fight through all kinds of damage, maybe even a lingering injury, to try to win that money. And then, like a fairy tale, at the end, despite Forrest Griffin winning, both guys get that six-figure contract. I think that's the thing. You can't have just standing and banging and a display of heart and say that's a good fight, because then it lacks that emotional weight. But at the same time, having that emotional tension can only take you so far. So what does that have to do with Ciryl Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik? Well, there was no real emotional weight, right? It was just a regular fight on a Saturday evening, or at least that's how it was built. There was no promo about how this was important to Ciryl Gane to entrench his status as a contender, and there was no real promo to build it that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is trying to get back to once again being considered a serious name in the heavyweight division. They could have made it so that this was important. The UFC could have really stressed how important this fight was, but they didn't. And to be honest, it's not their fault. They only get a certain amount of time, and there's a fight every week. They have to make a decision on which fights to build and which not to build. But then, for the commentary team to not build exactly what's going on here, and to show that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is being shut down and needs to come up with some way to win, and to make the stakes matter, I think did a disservice to how great of a performance Ciryl Gane had. And when Dana White comes out and trashes that performance, even though he knows they're playing high stakes chess, especially when Rozenstruik's best weapon is this nuke of a left hook, I think does a disservice to the emotional weight. Again, not their fault, because it's hard to really hype up a fight where it was, in all fairness, dull. And that leads me to the next part, the display of heart. Now, let me preface by saying, to step into any cage, whether it's amateur, regional, UFC, Bellator, it doesn't matter. To step into any cage to do an MMA contest takes immense heart. But in relative to fights like Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington, or Israel Adesanya versus Calvin Gastelum, or Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, both guys did not display that back and forth perseverance that you would have seen in those other 3 fights. And so, unfortunately, the fight kind of goes dull, not just because, there wasn't a lot of action, but it's also because those 2 things that makes a fight go from okay to great just wasn't there. But anyway, that's my theory. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. Comment below. Please subscribe, like. We're trying to really make this thing special here at the Leg Kick, and we need all the support we can get. So thank y'all for watching if you watched to the end. And yeah, again, there's a new video coming sometime in the next week or 2 that I'm really working on, that I'm actually kind of excited about, that was suggested to me. So yeah. Anyway, until next time, remember everybody, stay safe.